Proposals from the National Treasury look to make it easier for tenderpreneurs to get government contracts. What the proposal suggests that any tender up to 10 million rand should have a 50-50 weighting in terms of price and then BEE credentials. Up until now, or currently, BEE credentials count for only 10% of that particular weighting. It's leading to concerns from the Institute of Race Relations and others that this is going to lead to massive inflation in government procurement. Andile Tlhoaele is the CEO of Inforcomm. He joins me in our Johannesburg studio this evening. Andile, just take me through your perspective on this National Treasury proposal, please.
I think, Bruce, in the past and what is currently happening is there is no incentive for companies to implement BEE. So the 10% you were referring to, in simple terms, with a 10% discount that a company can pass on to government or any procurement client, they can get away without implementing BEE. So there's always been a call to change the way government goes about and procures goods and services, particularly the Preferential Procurement Framework Act, which is where the regulations come from.
Now, the Preferential Procurement Act, at the moment, we've got a 10% weighting in terms of the weighting that procurers need to give towards BEE in terms of the overall score and deciding who should get which deal. But by raising it to 50%, the Institute of Race Relations and others suggest that this is going to lead and force government's hand into dealing with certain suppliers. Those suppliers won't have to compete on price. They simply have to compete on a piece of paper that says, I'm black empowered.
To a larger extent, they are, telling the truth, but I think they don't really sometimes understand how companies and the codes are structured. The way BEE is implemented is basically has segmented companies in three particular levels. One is the less than 10 million rands companies, less than 50 and above 50. So between 10 and 50 and above 50. So the less than 10, if you think about it, there is a threat that that system can be abused, but it can only be abused to the extent that the procurement will always be less than 10 million. So the people that are intending to abuse the 50-50 procurement system are only likely to abuse it to the extent that whatever that's been procured is less than 10 million, because by the time you increase your procurement or to 10 million rands, suddenly the new games and the new rules apply.
Yeah, but Andile, you can't be suggesting for a moment that it's okay to abuse procurement up to 10 million rand, because 10 procurement contracts at 10 million rand each is 100 million rands of potential abuse. Take it up to 100 and we're getting into real money. Pravin Gordhan, the former finance minister, was massively outspoken about the fact the government already pays too much for its goods and services. Gwede Matashe, I remember him talking one day about a 6 rand bottle of water goes through government procurement processes and suddenly costs 26 rand for a bottle of water. We're talking about a potential feeding frenzy of abuse, aren't we?
Yes, I'm acknowledging, Bruce, that there will be those that will abuse the system. But the intention of the system is to basically acknowledge the value that BEE provides, particularly to small companies that are less than 10 million rand. So the companies that are likely to take and abuse that system, I'm just saying that they will be around, and for me, we need to find a way of mitigating that. And one of the things that government has put in place under the current supply chain management review is that that 50 points must be local content. So it's not just buying from somebody, marking it up and selling it to government. It's basically those points that must account for local content. But on the other hand, the intention is to give incentive to companies that want to implement BEE. So we're hoping, and these are small companies, so we're hoping that there will be justification for why a small company would suddenly go to the bank and say to them, I'm seeing government as a client, I've got a unique product that adds value that I can deliver to not only to government, but to the commercial sector out there, but I can leverage with these 50 points, and not necessarily for pricing, but for making sure that they remain competitive.
But doesn't this, I mean, it goes to issues of dealing with symptoms rather than cause. And one of the symptoms of BEE has been that it has failed dismally to create a new generation of broad-based black industrialists. All this is going to do is encourage the sort of behavior we saw Julius Malema engaging in Limpopo, for example, with dodgy road contracts and the trouble he got himself into with that in his previous life before he got into the honourable pastime of politics. Surely there's got to be a better mechanism to encourage BEE than simply putting down a firm quota and saying 50% is based purely on BEE and nothing else.
I think, Bruce, this is actually done to prevent that. So there are companies that are currently partnering with black-owned companies. And right now, they have no reason to do that because the only endowment they have is purely just 10%. So the intention of the policy, for me, is to create those type of structures at the smaller scale, whether through joint ventures, through partnerships, and I'm acknowledging that there will be those that usually gets reported in the media that will abuse the system. And one of the things that government has made it clear is that they're not going to pay more just because you are being black. All they're saying is that when you comply to the equity provision, you are likely to get an incentive for doing that. So the only people that are going to be losing out are those that are not willing to partner or comply with companies that are 51% black owned. But again, if I was on the other side and I needed to do that, my only limitation is up to 10 million rands. The minute I hit 10 million rands, Bruce, we now enter into a different regime. So for me, the way this thing is going to be implemented, those that are intending to abuse it will probably do it, and I'm saying they will, but it won't be for long. It will probably be 1 or 2 instances where they do it. But the intention of this is to incentivize those companies that want to either partner or want to establish competitive black-owned companies and say to them, as part of supplier development, we can now take you and allow you to leverage on the procurement regulations that government is putting in place.
Does this kind of restrictive policy, though, really create competitive, sustainable businesses into the future? Or does it create lazy businesses that have a sense of entitlement to transactions rather than go-getting businesses that have to work blimmin' hard to get the jobs in the first place in an open and fiercely contested market?
In the long term, it creates black-owned businesses that are competitive, that want to sustain their businesses, and that know what it means to build a business, leverage on something. Those guys will know that, you know, these points, tomorrow they were 10%, today they are 50. So they know that at some stage, these points might not even be around. In the short term, it's got a potential to create an environment where tenderpreneurs can come in. But for me, I don't think that's likely to be possible, because part of the things that are going to be implemented from how Treasury does the scoring, it's the last part of the procurement. The first one is still the technical compliance. So you have to pass through that before you are being evaluated on the 50-50 basis. So there is no way that somebody can wake up in the morning and say, just because I think I'm entitled, just because I think I'm lazy, therefore I can just go and get a procurement. No, that is actually the last part of the procurement evaluation.
Let me throw an example back at you and say for 210 million, Doe Steyn built a house, not according to everybody's taste, but if you go to Steyn City and you look back, I think it's up the first fairway, and you look back at this long fairway, you look at this palatial fake Tuscan mansion with waterfalls that come down the sides. He got that for 210 million rand. We've seen the photographs recently of the site visit, the MP's site visit to Nkandla, and we see properties, especially the police barracks, which were built at 6 million rand a pop at a total cost of 130 million rand, based on what looks like a catalogue of sale items from CTM. Somewhere in the system, somebody made an awful lot of money dealing with the Department of Public Works. My contention to you is this 50-50 split between empowerment and price that the Treasury is proposing is simply going to lead to more Nkandla-style abuses of public money.
Bruce, my argument is to say right now in the city of Joburg, you've got hawkers that wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, they go to the market and they go and sell vegetables, cheaper than the state can buy for hospitals, for prisoners. I'm just saying, those are the people that for me, I will see them taking advantage of the policies, suddenly there's a reason why those, which for me I call real entrepreneurs, you can then bring them into the system. Why? Because they provide value. 2, they provide the price advantage. And lastly, they are in there. So they're just going to use the fact that they are black and they are small as a leverage. You wouldn't build Nkandla because this policy only limits you to procurement opportunities that are less than 10 million. You wouldn't build a Dale Steyn. So the risks are actually quite lower in terms of the cap. I would have an issue if this 50-50, for example, was open-ended, was to 500 million rands procurement opportunities. Then you've got a real threat. But all I'm saying is that the intention is to make sure that genuine black entrepreneurs have something to leverage on. And I know that the way Treasury does its procurement evaluation, the first phase being the technical compliance. Once you pass through that, you then go through the next one where it's price and point scoring system. So for me, you would have to go through that part. You would have to have track references. You would have to have put in place the independent bid certification. So they would have done all those things. Then only after that they will consider the fact that you are being black. So for me, it's the cherry on top of the cake, Bruce.
Andile Tlhoaele, I wish I shared your optimism, and I'm delighted that you are optimistic. The proof of the pudding will be in the eating. Andile Tlhoaele is the chief executive of Inforcomm, discussing new Treasury proposals that for bids of up to 10 million rand within the public sector, 50% will be based on price and 50% will be based on the empowerment credentials of the companies concerned. Andile Tlhoaele has complete faith in the state and its ability to manage any potential conflicts of interest. I look at past history and I do question that capacity and then sometimes the will to implement what is a well-intended policy. That's it from the Moneymakers for this evening. Thank you for watching, and thank you to Andile for joining us this evening as well. That's it for the show. Thank you for watching. Till next time, bye-bye.